Test, 1, 2, test. Hey, everybody. Well, it is a hot-ish, definitely muggy spring day. I haven't shaved in a long time. I'm all sweaty. So it's the perfect time, cheers, to watch the pilot for Survivorman number 2. So it was the second one I did, and I did it in the middle of winter, where it was incredibly cold. So, usually I talk too much off the top. I want to get us right into this. On the other hand, I have stories to tell. Actually, right now, check this out. I live in a way where I leave all my windows and doors wide open, no screens, and the flies come in and they go out. The butterflies come in and they go out. On the odd occasion, even a bird comes in and goes out. And I love living that way. I think it just harkens back to how much I appreciated the wide open, semi-outdoor living in places like Bali or Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia. And so I kind of fake myself into believing I'm living like that here, and I open everything wide. But every once in a while, there's a hatching of something, and today was a hatching day. Check this out. So I just vacuumed up about 500 flies. So much for leaving the doors and windows open. I guess they all hatched because I just went and vacuumed up all of these out of our kitchen. All of them up against the kitchen window. It was insane. So, sometimes you can leave the windows open, sometimes you can't. I know, pretty gross. That was a little video I sent to my wife. So, anyway, I did the deed, sucked them all up with the vacuum, and then I hate to admit it, but no, I did not go outside and let them all free again and grab the raid and into the vacuum cleaner. Sorry about that, but in any event, glad to be rid of them. And here I am all hot and sweaty, about to watch myself all very, very cold. So this version came about, well, you know what? Let's watch for a few minutes and then I'll tell you how this all happened. Here we go. Pilot number 2. I'm working my way backwards. Oh, I should say, big shout out to the people who pointed out to me, we've never seen you do a director's commentary on your 2 pilots. I was like, oh, you're right. I haven't done those 2. I totally missed those. So here we are with 2 more Survivorman for me to give you the commentary on. If you want to watch it in full, just go on the playlists and find it, the Survivorman pilots. But I'm going to watch the winter one, and then you're going to see the very first Survivorman I ever did, which is the summer one, which we called, in both these cases, we ended up calling them Stranded. Actually, the original title was A Week in the Wilderness. A Week in the Wilderness with Les Stroud for Discovery Canada. Here we go. Let me just stop right there and pay homage to a very good friend who sadly passed in a plane accident. That's Trevor Nichols. And Trevor was an amazing man, a good man, a friendly man, and a hard worker and an amazing pilot. And unfortunately, he did pass in a plane crash. It was a tremendous loss to all of us who travel or who live in the North. And I'm still very good friends with his mom and dad and his sister. And it was a shock and a loss to lose this man.
In the far north, they call you a greenhorn until you go through the frigid rite of passage. And that test is not surviving the winter. It's freezing an appendage and having the black dead skin to prove it. It's the winter's version of a battle scar. I've been here before, dropped down in the middle of this remote wilderness and left to survive alone. The personal prayers of safety I utter here will be about warmth, about just making it through the night. Warmth during a time of season when forgiveness for mistakes doesn't exist. One wrong decision, one moment of apathy, or lack of vigilance, and this wilderness will not forgive me. It'll remain unmoved by any cries of pain from frostbite, unchangeable by any moans of hypothermic chills.
Just going to stop that right there. And, what was I going to point out? Two things. Number one, the question I get asked often, where is the most difficult place to survive? And normally the question, I think, or I believe, comes from a geographical perspective. But the reality is that the true answer is wherever it's cold. Which do I find most difficult to survive in? Always, always, always the cold. Well, what about the heat stroke in the desert and so on? Yeah, but you know, at nighttime there's some reprieve from the heat. At nighttime you can travel. In the daytime you can hide in the shade and just lay still. But in the cold, you just can't stop, man. It is absolutely the toughest. And you don't see very many survival shows that followed Survivorman where they did much in the winter, because it was brutal for the camera crew, brutal for the guys acting out their survival scenarios. And so survival in the winter, survival in the cold, by far, that is the most difficult challenge that you will ever face in survival, in my opinion. Oh, I just hit my mic. Sorry, in my opinion. The second thing was what? Oh, how this came to be. Two things. Two more things. How this came to be. I'll hit that later. But what I wanted to talk about was the shot that you just saw. In fact, Luke, rewind it just a tiny little bit and show them. Here, I'll do it.
It'll just be what it...
We'll go back, and we'll just go there.
By any moment.
Pause on that shot right there. So that shot, look, you take your inspiration from the things that you see as you grow up and so on. That is absolutely me pretending I'm in the making of the movie Never Cry Wolf. A beautiful, powerful film. If you've never seen Never Cry Wolf, watch it tonight. Settle down, relax, and enjoy a powerful and moving film. One of my favorites. Not my favorite. Jeremiah Johnson, as you know, is my top movie of all time. I'd say Never Cry Wolf is a close second or third. So this was me as a filmmaker, simply, you know, as Paul McCartney would say, copping an idea. We copped that from Little Richard. Well, I don't do accents well. I copped this idea from the movie Never Cry Wolf. I just thought it was a great way to show what it's like to be left alone in the middle of winter when a plane drops you off. All right, here we go.
Hypothermic chills. It'll just be what it is. A frigid, deadly landscape, helping only those who help themselves.
I can hear the sound of Trevor's plane just off in the distance now. It's about minus 30. Now what? And so that's, for the sake of it, that's minus 30 Celsius, which translates as bloody cold. It's mid to late afternoon. And I don't have the time to get picky, so best bet is to get out of this wind. So now all of that gear there, you know, these were the early days. I was still trying to figure out what kind of gear I needed, what I could use, how it would work well. And back then, I mean, there was no GoPros, and all the cameras were big and heavy. There were Sony VX1000s, that was the lightest you could get, but I was trying to get better quality. So in this case, I had a big shoulder mount camera. I get asked a lot about how things have changed over the years. Well, everything got smaller, higher quality, and lighter. Bonus, bonus, bonus. That's what happened over the years. But in the beginning, and for many years of filming Survivorman, that was not the case. And even when the first GoPros came out, they were crap, to be honest with you. The first line of them, I mean, they served a purpose, but their audio was terrible. And, you know, they were these cheap standard definition. But eventually they got better. So, here we go.
In the dead of winter, even the lightest of breezes is enough to chill you down and slowly kill you with hypothermia.
See if I can find, I'll stop that guy right there. Just to comment on those snowshoes. You know, over the years, like backpacks and sleeping bags, tents and sleeping pads and cook gear. You know, when you're an outdoor guide, you go through a lot of different gear and you develop your favorites, the things you like, the way you exist when you're out there on the trail. And snowshoes is another one of those. I have to admit now, you know, I do love my, I think they're REI Mountain Ascent snowshoes. I think that's what they are. And I love them. They're great snowshoes. But I also learned and trained all through many, many years of using the traditional shoes. I had shoes that were made by the Cree way up in northern Quebec, handmade with birch and caribou hide as the webbing, and then on into military ones for sloppy wet weather when you're like in March when the snow's wet and you know the rawhide isn't good, so these heavy military ones, and then of course I've used lots of cheap ones. But over the years the snowshoes have changed, and I will admit when you're really far north and it's big poofy snow, there is still nothing that compares to the beautiful handmade snowshoes by the northern indigenous cultures. They're works of art and perfectly functional. A good little shelter here somewhere. There comes a time, well, the time's pretty immediate actually. You've got to make one important decision. Stay or go. Most importantly is just the realization that you have to make that decision. If you stay, you have a chance to build camp, make signal fires, and maybe start hunting. You might have a situation where you're simply waiting for a better chance to travel, like waiting out a storm, or perhaps waiting for freeze up. Or maybe there comes a time when you realize they ain't looking for you anymore, and it's time to get out of here.
Shelters don't usually come ready-made, and there are a lot of variables to finding the right location.
So, I mean, the narration gave me the opportunity to be a little more dramatic when I talk, but, you know, I know that all of you pretty much got this, that when I launched Survivorman with nothing else out there, I was just trying to teach. This is really all you're seeing here, is you're seeing an outdoor educator teach wilderness survival by, placing himself in a situation and running the cameras. That's it. And so most of my commentary to Canada and the United States, to camera was in the effort to say, here's the next point, here's the next point. Every Survivorman for me was another class in outdoor education. That's the way I approached it.
In a case like this,
which is to say there was nothing competitive about it. It was never meant to be a competition.
I'm literally looking for a spot where otherwise I won't freeze to death. But if there's one thing I've learned about the wilderness, it's that you can't go there with expectations. You can only deal with what you actually find.
Home, I guess. I don't have a lot of options here. In the survival books, they always show some guy in an quick emergency shelter. You can get under the boughs of a spruce tree or something, and there's a little cubby hole. Well, I've looked around. This is about as best as I can do for immediate natural shelters. But there is true story, and that's one of the things I was always so critical of when it comes to survival books. All of them, the SAS Survival Handbook, the Boy Scout Survival Handbook, all of them. Now there's like a whole friggin' boatload of them that are out there, but they were all just plagiarizing the one from before. Actually, that's a true story. At one point when I was writing my survival book, I looked and I found the same drawing in 8 books, the identical same drawing. Talk about plagiarism. Anyway, I digress. The point being that so often they were so generic that it didn't make sense. They were telling you something specific and trying to apply it to a generic reality, which when I wrote Survive, which Luke is going to slide across the screen right now, I wrote that manual coming from the perspective of let's look at everything more holistically and generically because your situation is going to be different. And so if you're expecting to find a shelter underneath a spruce tree just because there's 4 feet of snow, no problem, I'll find a shelter that way. You're in for a sorry surprise, because that's not the way it works. So that's why I often will reference and make a little mock of what you find in survival books, is because they didn't give you the knowledge that what you really should be learning about survival are concepts and materials, not super specifics and names, if that makes sense. A lot of boughs and stuff, we'll see. One of the best places for building a shelter when you're looking at materials, anybody who's ever been out with me on the bush knows that number one is always going to be firewood. What firewood is around that you can burn? But a big, huge one that can be very, very helpful when it comes to boughs for bedding or boughs for roofing is if you can find yourself a good ½ acre of Christmas tree-sized evergreens, those are the easiest to work with. You take the whole tree, you strip it of all its branches, you have all those boughs. That's in terms of survival, and that is what I look for. A big old growth forest is really tricky and very difficult to find a lot of the material you need. So actually crossover regions, between swamps and highlands and so on, and crossover forests and that have more supplies ready at hand often than, say, a mature old growth forest. I got to get in here and just hopefully make sure I'm protected from most of the wind. That's really important. So get out of that wind. I looked around and saw a couple of other possibilities, but if you sit and watch for a while, you notice a little Spanish moss hanging down. You could see it moving. So you knew there's a breeze working through there. When I sat for a while and looked at this spot here, everything's still. So hopefully I'm in a little protective cove. I mentioned there about the wind. You know what? Sun, rain, sand blowing, whatever. In the end, everything is made worse, usually, by the wind. With some exceptions. A buggy area, you want the wind. Right? Super hot and muggy, you'd want the wind. But that's not all that normal. Well, I guess now that I think of it, lots of guys get lost when they're out on fishing trips in the spring. But if you're talking about your worst nemesis, if it's the cold, as stated earlier, well, the wind just makes it that much worse. I just did a big no-no. Put my axe down on the ground. Huge, huge mistake to do that. Do not put your axe on the ground, especially in the winter time, because you'll lose it in a mere second. For anybody who's actually from up in the Armstrong, Wabakimi area, the axe that I'm using there belongs to Dan Brinton. And I don't know if anybody ever watching this will ever know that name, but if you do, if you know, I guess. So anyway, that's Dan's axe. The benefit of this shelter is it's sort of a natural shelter. All I'm doing is chopping off the tops of trees, little spruce trees here, and filling up a wall in the holes here. Sort of like a makeshift lean-to, I guess. Oh, it's just... You have to imagine that each one of these shots of me talking to the camera, I had to climb out, work with the tripod, the camera, the tape, the battery, the focus, the sound, the audio, everything, get it all set up to get back in a position to continue telling you my story. Feeling cozy already. I gotta keep my humor up because I won't be there at 3 a.m. I could get into doing a big elaborate shelter, but I only have probably another hour and a half of daylight. And I know that in making a shelter like that, I'm gonna start sweating. You sweat, you die. So I don't want to sweat.
There are a lot of deprivations.
That may very well be the first time that I said that.
I'm willing to put up with in the name of survival. But going without an axe in the middle of a Canadian winter isn't one of them. It changes the possibilities immensely.
True story. You're in the jungle, machete. You're in a temperate forest anywhere, an axe. If you could have a saw as well, hugely advantageous. One of those small fold-up saws. But your knifeware, if you will, or what you're going to use for cutting or chopping, is highly dependent upon where you are. And as I said, so if you're in the jungle, it's a machete that's much more useful.
It can enable a lot more effective survival. But in the hands of someone without skill, one slip, and you've just put the axe into your shin, and the odds against you. I'm protecting my eyes by closing them at the last second of the chop. Being blind out here wouldn't be good.
Yeah, this is possibly dangerous. You better know how to wield an axe before you start doing this. Any injury out here is deadly. You don't have to use your axe. Don't. Break things off. You want to save the axe. Keep it sharp. Now, all of that said, I actually did bring a file with me, because I rarely take an axe along without a file strapped to it.
And I didn't actually ever get a chance to teach you all sharpening of an axe until finally, if you want to look for it, I did the Grenada Jungle episode. And I said, I've never been able to teach sharpening. I want to do that. So I finally, very basic sharpening, but I did teach it in the Grenada Jungle episode. My favorite sharpener, by the way, that you can buy for knives is actually just the Lansky kit. But for axes, I just use an axe file.
Because a dull axe makes you work a lot harder. These boughs are going to be good insulation for the shelter, both underneath me and all around me. Try and make like a cocoon. It's always good to know how many hours you've got left in the day, and a great and easy way to do that is to outstretch your hand towards the sun. And on an average hand, each finger represents about 15 minutes. So if you just touch the bottom of the sun and then count down to the horizon, you get a good approximation of just how many hours are left in the daylight, and that's always important to know.
It might be possible that some of you are thinking, well, this is pretty benign information. We know all this stuff. Well, you didn't know all this stuff before. I mean, none of this stuff was ever mentioned on a TV show ever before this. And so even doing something as simple as that, how to do the timing, it was absolutely brand new. Throw into the mix shelter building, fire starting, food procurement, water purification. And these are skills that you just didn't see on a television set. How about that way? I put it that way. Some of them, in a very minor, quick sense, existed in the Jeremiah Johnson film. Outside of that, you had to take a course, as I did. You went and took courses from really great instructors and learned, and there might be some poorly produced amateur videos you could watch on a particular skill set. But otherwise, none of this stuff is on television. So at the time, I'm thinking this because I'm remembering the folks at Discovery Canada were like, wow, this is so cool. And I'm thinking like, well, this is just what I've been doing for 15 years now, but it was brand new to TVs.
I'm losing my daylight, so I'm going to light the fire. I have one match, so hopefully I'll have no problems with that one match. What the heck is it? And I've got this big log here, or log, well, this tree anyway, it's a long one. I can feed it in throughout the time so that I don't have to cut it that way. So after I get the fire going, all I'm going to do then is reinforce the shelter a bit and try to get as much firewood here on hand before it's too dark for me to be moving around in the bush. I don't have a lot of time though. Here we go. Last match of the week.
So, little tip there. When you don't have a saw, this is why a saw is so handy. If you don't have a saw and you're trying to keep a fire going for a long time, the best way, if you feed it, is to take 3 long dead poles that you're going to burn. Take 2 of them, put them side by side, take the third one and put it like this, and your fire is in that where they're all connected. That's where your fire is. And that way, they burn nicely, and as they burn down, you just keep feeding. And it's a way to work with burning very long, dead trees when you don't have a saw or an axe, or if you want to keep the axe sharp and not waste it on chopping a tree up into nice little fire logs sort of thing. And the matter of only having one match, it's just for something a little dramatic, right? It's like, well, I'll go in with one match. That'll start me off. And then I have a second method that I'll show later.
Birch bark. Birch bark has got to be the best fire starting material out here.
Anyone who has ever had to survive will attest to the power and beauty and the reassuring sound of the first flames of a fire well built. Without it, survival, any survival, is a horrible struggle.
Don't need this.
I get asked a lot about, the number one skill sort of thing. To me, it will always be being able to get a fire going anywhere, anytime. You should be able to get a big fire going after 5 days of solid rain. It's totally possible. I've seen canoe guides say, well, we can't have any fires because, it's raining. And that's nonsense. I've never not had a fire when I was working as a outdoor adventure guide. And so that is the skill set. And a lot of, guys I know, because they light a campfire for a barbecue kind of thing, think they can light fires, but it's not the same. And the big tip that I've given before, I'll give it again quickly, is here's what I did 3 summers in a row. On the first summer, as an outdoor guide, where I had to light many fires for paying clients, on one summer I forced myself to only ever use a flint striker. I had to gather material right then and there, and I had to use my flint striker. Did that all summer long. Then the next summer, I used only, still with paying clients, I used only a piece of rock and steel to get my fire going many days in a row in the summer, spring and fall. And then the third summer, fire bow. That is a great way to teach yourself how to become great at getting a fire going anywhere, anytime, under any conditions, with any supplies.
I have a feeling, even with the fire, with this big wide opening here, it's going to be a long, cold night.
I should mention here, huge kudos to Barry Farrell for this. This is a re-edit of the original version that showed in Canada. It's just a much more simplistic edit back then. This way, Barry just kind of took all of the footage and redid it and put in some of our newer music, that sort of thing, and made it flow much smoother. So big shout out to Barry there.
Well, it was definitely a cold night. I kept the fire going and I was able to just keep feeding it all night. A lot of shivering, very little sleeping. It's warmed up a bit. It's about minus 17 right now. So it's not so bad. Let's find out what I've got to work with here. First thing, very valuable in survival situation, rope. 1,001 uses. Flare. Well, we're going to try out a flare. Never had a chance to do it before, so we're going to try it out this week and see how that works. Signal mirror. Excellent. We'll,
By the way, this is how, when we were training in survival all through the early 80s, this is, this Folgers coffee tin can filled with our survival supplies, and we can use the tin can to boil water in. We would just go out for many weekends like this. And this particular spot, by the way, for, let's call it a formula for the Survivorman series, was something that I don't think I really ever lost. It was almost every single episode is like, let's look at what I have this time. And it was kind of cool, kind of fun for me, because sometimes it was an embarrassment of riches, really. Like if I took a full survival kit, it's like, I got all kinds of stuff. This is easy, you know. And other times it was kind of groveling and really rough, but it was an enjoyable, repeating sequence to include in the Survivorman series.
Well, it's stuck in there, but take my word for it. Inside there's a small mirror. Can used not only for signaling airplanes, but you can also check your face and see if you've got any white spots in case you've been out in the wind. Make sure you're not getting frostbitten anywhere. Ah, a hot hand. That's got to help me out at night, for sure. Only one, unfortunately, and there's 7 nights to deal with. A whistle, vital. You can go behind a tree in the bush, even in the summertime, especially in the winter. Yell your lungs off. No one can hear you. A whistle helps to cut through the dense forest cover a lot better. Same thing with trying to go across rapids. Very difficult to hear a human voice. Flint striker. Going to get into that later for fire starting. Excellent item to keep with you. You can drop this thing in the water, pick it up a year later, and it still works. Aha! Garbage bag. Not just any ordinary garbage bag, an orange garbage bag. I've got a shelter cover, I've got a raincoat, I've got a signaling light device because orange is going to show up a lot better than dark green. If you can take a garbage bag, make it an orange one. Fishing line, and some lures to go with it. And what's important with these lures as well is that I've purposely chosen winter fishing lures. And that's another thing that's key. When you set up your survival kit, make it something that's conducive to the season you're in. So in this case, something for winter.
By the way, I know many of you are aware that I've said and made the promise that if I get to 1 million subs, I'll do a Survivorman again, and that still remains true. One of the things that I'm thinking about doing with it as well is I've got a friend, an acquaintance that I spoke to before he went on to Alone, and he did very well. And I might, sorry, I'm just getting over a head cold. I might contact him and say, okay, remind me again, what's everything that the contestants on Alone are allowed to take with them? And I know there's a table of choices, but they also have mandatory things. If I remember correctly at the time, for example, it was a mandatory 4-season sleeping bag, I think a mandatory tarp, you know, and then there was other things they could ask for on top of that. So I'm going to get what that list is, and then I'll give that list to me and see how that changes survival when you have the same items that people on the series Alone would have. And for those of you who are always wondering, why don't I go on Alone? Like, you know, why wouldn't I? Because it's competition. And I just have no desire to do anything in a competitive fashion. And anyway, I did Survivorman for 20 years. And as I was told by the head instructor of the guys who, the head instructor for the series Alone, that in boot camp, don't know if they still do it, but they used to watch Survivorman episodes every night when they were in boot camp getting ready to go do the series. So why do I need to go on Alone? Godspeed to them. There's some really cool people doing that series. I don't appreciate the way the producers manipulate the storyline. That's unfortunate, but forget the producers. The contestants, they're cool people. And some of them are really good, too. Hey, everyone. Allow me to interrupt myself. I don't really like hawking merchandise and swag, but you guys do ask all the time where you can get certain items. For example, check this out, Hennessy hammock. I put a lot of time and effort into designing this hammock with Hennessy. It's their top hammock. It's an amazing, beautiful, comfortable hammock to enjoy for all of your adventures out there, so just check it out. It's got a full-size tarp, which was a big thing for me. It's got insulation, and I love it. So I've got the Hennessy hammocks. Of course, for years I've been in a phenomenal relationship with Hella of Norway, Hella Knives. And this is our signature knife, of course, the Tamagami. These knives are handmade. In fact, I've been there to this very ancient factory where I don't know how many, it's well over 100 years that they've been operating, and every single handle is handmade. All of the grinding, everything is done by hand. And these knives are absolutely beautiful. I also now have a brand new relationship, and you will see these items, new foraging tools that I'm designing with LT Wright Knives out of Ohio. And also, Chef Paul Rogalski of Wild Harvest has the signature Chef Paul Rogalski kitchen knife collection. Those are a big thrill to me, to have these beautiful items that we spent years designing, and I still have them available for you.
However, if you want to go more the route of just enjoying the Survivorman legacy, if you will, then of course, go to my website, lestroud.ca, go to the shop page. Right there, you've got everything. All the swag, all the merch, such as my manual on survival. This is if you want to get into survival, this book is meant to be a way to walk you through step by step, because I deal a lot more with concepts than I do with specifics, because that's really important. Once you understand the concepts of fire by friction, for example, you can do it depending on where you are, because I can't give you the advice on how to do it here in Canada and hope that it's also going to work down in the jungle. Things are different. So I've always been very proud of this book, Survive. So that is my survival manual. Also, if you weren't aware, I've got the book Will to Live. I wrote this book well, it was kind of for a lot of fun. I took my 10 favorite survival stories, such as Chris McCandless Into the Wild or the Robertson family and the life raft, and I basically dissect them with this book. I tear apart the story, I go through everything, and I even give them a little bit of a grade on how I thought they did. So I really enjoyed writing this book. It's a real easy read, it's a fast read, but I think there's a lot of insight there for you into all of these different examples of people who have either survived or perished. Speaking of books, so honored, so thrilled, so proud that Wild Outside, my first children's book, has won the Yellow Cedar Award, Best Nonfiction Children's Book in Canada for ages 7 to 14. I tell stories from Survivorman, lessons learned during those expeditions and adventures, and there are even activities they can do in the out of doors. So there you go. My new book, my children's book, Wild Outside, Around the World with Survivorman, has just won the Yellow Cedar Award, and I'm up for another award yet. And in keeping with stuff that's going on right now, we are also up for an award for our Season 1 recipe book from the series Wild Harvest. We, with every single season, create a recipe book based on the recipes that we show you in the actual shows themselves. So that's Wild Harvest. And of course, if you want the DVD, you can get that on this website as well, lestroud.ca. And let's not forget too, that I'm a musician. The CDs themselves are available on the website. The next release will be the re-release of the Mother Earth album on vinyl. But go on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music, or on my website, you can go to the shop page, you can pick up all of my CDs. So this is the last one. This is my 20th anniversary selection. Check it out. Every film I've ever made, 76 films in all of the Survivorman, Bigfoot, Beyond Survival, music documentaries, one-off films such as the award-winning La Loche about the school shooting up in Canada and a healing canoe trip. This is my 20th anniversary, 76 films. And people that have picked this up have raved about it. And I'm really proud that I can say I've got 20 years of anything, to be honest with you. That's available for you as well on that Les Stroud shop page. Okay, that's me hawking my stuff. Back to the video.
Now these tracks here are woodland caribou tracks. Unlike its counterpart up in the Arctic, they tend to be a very solitary animal, very difficult to see in the boreal forests, especially in the summertime. But in the wintertime, they will come together in small little communal groups. And the great thing about what you can see here is the difference in time in these tracks. These two tracks here beside me, who knows, maybe a couple of days old or so, but it's been windy for most of the day, and those tracks over there aren't wind blown at all, so we know that an animal has come through here pretty recently. Further on up there, you can see where there's some bit more snow muscled up there, mushed up. What happens is they will often come together in little groups out in the middle of lakes, and who knows what they do, just hang out and talk, but they do tend to come together out there, walk around. This is probably more than one animal, as I see some other tracks around the area here.
I'm taking...
Tracking has always been one of my most, I just find it fascinating. There's a whole science to it, and I've done a lot of extra training in tracking, and it's just fascinating, you know, especially, you know, you're tracking humans for a search and rescue situation. Here's a tiny little, very basic little tracking lesson that I taught once. So it's a kind of cool little method for figuring out what it is you're tracking and how big they are, that kind of thing.
Taking in as much of the surrounding area as I can to see what I have to work with. It's stage 3 of assessing my situation. Stage 1 is myself. Stage 2 is my gear. And stage 3 is the environment.
So that ended up becoming patented. The Survivorman zones of assessment. What you have on your body and what shape your body's in and all of that. What is close at hand, your gear. So is there a backpack over there and it's got a tent in it? What is further afield? Well, there's a cabin a half a mile away, or if I go due east, I can hit the highway. Those are the 3 zones of assessment, and it takes about 60 seconds for you to sit still and think your way through those zones to figure out your assets, to compile that list, and then with that knowledge, make a proactive decision on what to do next.
And this is a tough environment.
So this is brutal. This is why you want to stay away from hills as much as possible. This is where the hole in the snowshoe, this is what it's all about. My toes are slipping down into the bottom of or through the hole of my snowshoe, and it's my toes that are gripping the hill to help push me up, which is difficult in this powdery, poofy, slippery snow. Again, that's why I so much prefer using moccasins rather than boots. I can feel the ground with my toes, I can get that little extra grip in there. Not easy though, either way. Moccasins, also called mucklucks, when it comes to the winter version of them. The benefit being just your feet really move around inside them. Think of it, wearing your slippers. Your feet actually, the muscles move, and so the result of that is that your feet are actually warmer in the cold. Well, what have we here? In the summertime, I did a similar survival situation where I came and stayed right here in this location, right in this spot. But let's take a look, and let's hope there's no bears that used it for a den, because it's a perfect size. There's even frozen, as if there was like an air hole coming out here. Make no mistake about it, bears do hibernate. But many hunters know it doesn't take much to wake them up and have them come popping out in the middle of winter, very angry. I suppose it would make a good emergency shelter if I had to get in there. A little rock and everything is there, but it took me a long time to dig this snow out. Even though it's covered over and everything, the way the winds blow and whip around here, they've just blown snow in there. There's at least almost 1.5 feet or 2 feet of snow in the shelter, reaching all the way in. So it took me a bit of work. But as I said, this is definitely not the ideal location anyway. It'd be freezing with that north wind. And generally speaking, a summer shelter, a winter shelter, rarely are going to be in the same place. In the winter, you're protected from all of the wind and out of everything south facing for the sun and so on. In the summer, you want to be in the breeze because of bugs and if it's a place that gets super hot, that kind of thing. So it's often 2 completely different locations. One does not work for the entire 12 months. Even in the wintertime, you've got grass just sticking up out of the snow. If the snow's not too deep sometimes, it's almost always nice and dry. I love it for getting a fire going. It gets a lot tougher to get a fire going in the wintertime. I know in the summer, I love the option of having a really big fire and dropping big logs, even punky logs on it, because they'll burn all through the night. In the wintertime, all your punky logs are buried and frozen to the ground and buried by the snow. So you're left to whatever you can sort of grab and break. Anything small and dead like this off the bottoms of trees help a lot, but certainly the bigger fire I can get going, the better I'll feel. You know, when I was first dropped off by the airplane, I could have swore that towards where the sun is right now was due east. I was sure of it. Turns out, it's actually due south. Now, how did I find this out without a compass? Pretty simple. My watch. It's not that difficult. If you take your watch, you point your hour hand directly at the sun, halfway between your hour hand and 12 noon on the face of your watch will be south. And of course, the opposite's going to be directly north.
Having a firm grasp on where north and south are can be very helpful. For everything from where to put your shelter, to where to ice fish, to which location help should be coming from.
That's the one I wanted. Well, I've been spending the day just adding to this shelter. As much as possible, I need to close it all in. Tonight, I'm still in the same scenario I was in last night, where I've got to sit here and buy a bigger outdoor fire. The best thing to do is to create like a cocoon that you can get right inside. So even if you didn't have a fire, at least there's some residual heat in there from you. But if you can have a fire that's also protected and inside your shelter, way better, especially in the winter. So I've just been weaving these branches into my shelter to keep me warm and to keep me up off the ground. Right now, there's quite a whiteout happening on the lake. So you know what that means? It means that satellite phone, GPS, two-way radio, none of these things will do me any good at this very moment with a whiteout like that. Nobody can fly in that, nobody can land here to help me out. I should point out that I didn't actually have any of those items with me. I get asked that question a lot, you know, do I take in communication? I would say that for 60% of the Survivorman episodes, roughly somewhere in there, absolutely no communication whatsoever. And can't walk myself out, can't get out, no way of signaling anybody. And then another, 20%-ish, 25% of the time, I could either, I would have communication, and it wouldn't work. Doesn't get out past the jungle canopy sort of thing. Batteries die. And then the remaining 15% of the time, I could have walked out, like in Utah, I think I could have walked out. I think in Arizona, I could have walked out. There's times when I could do that. Or when I did have a signaling device, like when I was in the life raft, so that I could. But that was an example of where it hardly ever worked. Even when I was trying it, it didn't work. So that has been how I've done this. And yeah, there's been a lot of times where, sure, if I'd gotten bit by a snake in the Amazon jungle, it would have been body retrieval a few days later, not pickup of less. It would have been body retrieval. So thinking back and saying it to you like the way I'm saying it now, I'm thinking, well, that was stupid.
Even today, with all of our technology, I can be stuck and completely out of touch in the remote wilderness, where problems like an appendicitis attack could kill me.
Time to make fire again. This time, I'm going to use basically the traditional pioneer method. They didn't have their packs of matches or lighters to carry around. What they did have was steel, something with a high carbon element, and rock. And let's not get into what different kinds of rocks you can spark with. If you're lost, just find a rock that'll spark. If you happen to be lucky enough to have some steel with a high carbon element in it. Ow, haven't done this in a while. Last thing you need is a way, what's happening here is you're coming down and shaving off tiny little slivers of metal, and they're shooting away, melted, and they need something to land on. So what you need is something to catch that little spark and then hold a glow. What I've got here is charred cloth. Basically, you take 100% cotton, and, whoops, don't get it in the snow, and you put it in a tin, close the lid of the tin, put it in the fire,
So you've chicken before the egg. You got to have a fire to make this stuff. And I'll show it later, but you'll pull the tin out and open it up after a while, and you've got this charred cloth. The point is it's charred, not burnt.
So you can imagine, as I said earlier, I spent an entire summer lighting several dozen fires for clients on canoe trips. And this is the only way I started the fire every single morning that was going to make the breakfast, make them coffee, and so on. It is essentially the pioneers' match kit that they would, carry around with them. It's actually a very fun way to do it.
So you try to get the spark to land on it. Oh boy, not a good start. Oh boy, it's lots of good sparks, but the cloth isn't holding it. That's not a good sign. Remember Jeremiah Johnson? Robert Redford sat there in the bush trying to get a fire going. This is exactly the method he was using.
Show that, Luke.
Got her. All right. What I've got now is this piece of charred cloth is just holding a little ember, a little glow. I think you might be able to see that. That gives me some time to put it in my tinder bundle, which is this collection of dried grass and Spanish moss, cedar bark that's been all schmucked up there, sort of broken up in that. And try to make yourself a little furnace here. Whew, close. Make sure you got all your other tinder ready. And of course, birch bark is a perfect tinder, full of oils. Even when it's soaking wet, it'll burn well. Oh. And you're in business. Now, why should you bother carrying a piece of rock and steel, you might ask? Well, true enough. I'd much rather carry matches and a lighter. But the point is, what if you only have a few matches left? Or you run out of fluid in your lighter? All you have to do is figure out a way to make your charred cloth. If you don't have 100% cotton, which is what it takes, so you can use the bark from a punky tree. You can make charred cloth. If you found a way to get a spark like that, you can extend the life of your lighter and your matches and not even have to use them. And that may matter a great deal if all you have is a handful, 3 or 4 matches on your person. Whew.
The whole thing of fire starting and getting a fire going just to remain alive, just to survive the night, it's such a, visceral experience to watch that. I think that's one of the reasons why, it became popular in media is because you're seeing the basic elements of survival, the basic elements of life, and a mastery of, if you will, a mastery of how to bring forth that fire to sustain life. I mean, that might sound a little overly profound, but I don't really think it is. I think it's applicable I think that's what was one of the fascinations was so many people just, there was the little bit of the fantasy of, well, I wonder if I could survive if I was ever left alone in the wilderness. Certainly there was that with me in the beginning. And then there's just this recognizing, I think, that we're dealing with real primal survival here.
Well, Welcome to my chalet. Well, I made it through another night. Obviously I must have got enough sleep for my fire to die. Is that ever vital? One thing that should be part of your plans for surviving is getting sleep, getting rest. If you get to the point where you're slipping into exhaustion, fighting hypothermia becomes extremely difficult. Even if all you get is 20 minutes at a time, which is about maybe 15, which is about what I got last night. That's fine. At least you're getting some sleep. You need that rest to be able to think clearly.
The irony of the North is that you can freeze to death on a clear and beautiful sunny day.
Well, these are fresh marten tracks. How fresh? Well, he's behind me in the bush. That's how fresh. Didn't seem to want to poke his head out to be filmed, but I watched him run up here just now as I came along. I've been walking the shore, going into different areas trying to find rabbit tracks, and that bush is so thick. Everything sounds so easy in a book, you know. Find yourself some rabbit tracks and set your snares and blah blah blah. Yeah, right. Then you get out here and you try to walk 30 feet and you're already starting to sweat. But the best bonus I've got from walking the shoreline is finding different patches of grass and cedar trees for my tinder. That's been great, but very few animal signs. Caribou tracks and now these marten tracks.
Unfortunately, tracks alone don't make a meal.
I've been walking for 2 hours along the shoreline. It's very cold wind when it hits up, and spending a lot of calories, a lot of energy. I'm a bit sweaty, so I got to be careful. And all I've seen is one marten, not a single animal track. I poked my head in a few places, nothing. And the other mistake I made was, and bear in mind, I actually looked at a map this time before I came out here. I thought where I'm sitting was the outflow of a major river. Well, it ain't. I was wrong. It was a long walk to find out that I was wrong. Just to get some running water.
Little lesson in there, you know, there have been other times in my life where I've, you know, taken a chance on what I saw on the map, and then you get there and it's just not like that at all. A real big one was the Argentina episode of Survivorman, if you've seen that one. I went there and judging by the maps and everything, I thought I was going to be walking on fields of grass. Did not realize that those fields of grass were all water bogs. They looked like fields of grass, but you sunk down 6 feet. Looking at maps and deciding where you're going to go if you're bushwhacking, it basically doesn't work. You've got to take a lot more into account and really research before you realize, oh, this little creek I thought I was going to follow is actually a tangle of devil's club and fallen over cedar trees. The maps don't show that.
Now I got to head back before it gets too late and add to my shelter some more, get that fire going, stock up my firewood for the night. Don't forget, when you go to stock up firewood in a survival situation, plan on needing close to 5 times more than what you think you need. Make a pile, look at it and say, okay, I need 5 more times the wood than what I have here right now. And you'll have enough to get you through the morning, through to the morning. I think I'll just let the sweat dry a bit and warm up in the sun. Know how your lips get all frozen? You can't really speak. Oh.
Oy vey. So young there. Goodness gracious. Let's see. What year is this? This is 2025. This was 2002.
alone in a survival situation, I don't take chances. I've got to keep dry and watch my energy level constantly. In this cold, you can burn up to 6,000 calories a day just walking.
Fortunately for me, there was a big windstorm here back in the fall after one heavy snow. There's an awful lot of trees that are laying horizontal. It makes it absolutely brutal for walking through the bush. Just brutal. My lips are still frozen. Jeepers. But it does help me out in that it puts a lot of the tops of these spruce trees down low to the ground. Lots of good boughs for me to collect. Well, I got my Christmas tree. I just need some presents now.
It's time to break out my flint striker. And truth be told, once you get good at using this little device, it's nearly as easy as matches, and often even more reliable.
I have no idea why I included both on this episode. I guess I thought, I probably thought, I don't know if I'll ever get another chance to do anything like this ever again. I mean, this was not Survivorman. This was the pilot. And I had not sold the series yet as a series concept. In fact, I wasn't even thinking series yet. I was just doing the summer one and now this winter one for Discovery Canada. That was it. So I guess I thought I'd try to squeeze in as much as I could as far as survival instruction.
There we go. See, I'm ready with my tinder. If you're not, you're cooked, so to speak. Or rather, you're not cooked. You want to have all your tinder bundle ready to go. Whew.
I don't know if you noticed, but off to the left of me there, to the right of me, left of the screen, the flint striker slipped off of my mitt down onto the snow. And case in point, you should never do what I did there. You don't ever put your gear on the ground, ever, in a survival situation. It's so easily lost, and that little piece of gear that you lost might mean the difference between life and death.
Now, another thing that's important. Actually, before I get to that, I'll just mention that I'm going to now maybe put some logs over, but I'm going to fortify this shelter a bit more, maybe so I can enclose my fire in a bit. I don't have to keep it so big all the time, and I'll be able to get more of the heat from it into my shelter. Well, it's end of day 3, and oh man, it's cold. If the full moon brings with it clear skies, then it's going to be very bitterly cold tonight too. I hope not.
Let's just pause it there and let's just go back a bit. Back a little bit. A little bit more, Luke, to there. Okay. So there's the camera I was using. If I remember correctly, that's a Panasonic, or no, JVC, I think it was. And so you see the size of it. It's a shoulder mount camera. And so I've got the big tripod and all of that. The larger batteries, which didn't last too long. The big audio pack. Heavy stuff to be trying to film yourself out in a situation like this. And it got so cold that camera snapped off at the top. And the handle or something. And I was looking down at the computer chips inside, because the metal casing was so cold it snapped. So yeah, this was definitely the early days.
And oh man, it's cold. If the full moon brings with it clear skies, then it's going to be very bitterly cold tonight too. I hope not.
Give a shout out to, wow, it's almost minus 40 there. Look at that. That's where Celsius and Fahrenheit equal out. Minus 40 is minus 40, pretty much in both measurements. Where the heck was I going? Okay, I totally forgot what I was going to say. Except it's freaking cold. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. Shout out to Peter Cleach for all of the music back in these early days that we used. Great background music. Written specifically for Survivorman, and I've never in my entire career used padded music, and I never will. You're working in film and video and so on. Do the world a favor and do artists a favor. Find yourself an artist who's a musician who wants to score for you, and work with with writers, with artists. Forget the AI created music and the padded music that you get from a bank of a million, different music cues. Forget that. Employ a writer to work with you on your film. That's all I have to say about that.
I have two cameras with me, a large one and a smaller one. Big one's just frozen up. It just takes a long time to heat it by the fire. So I'm reduced now down to one small camera. I was able to stay warm last night. Well, let's just say I was able to stay alive last night just by mostly feeding the fire and sitting by the fire. The full moon helped me to be able to see the trees around me. I stocked myself up good with firewood before the night fell. But I also used another trick involving these guys, which, thanks for the axe, helped me to have access to. I can't believe how cold it's getting. Minus 37 was just brutal last night. So other than getting up and jumping around and stomping on my feet to keep me warm, another way I was able to keep myself a little bit warmer, help me get me through the night, were these guys, hot rocks. Basically, you get them by the fire, usually about a dozen. You'll need about a dozen to do this, well, or as many as you can get, I suppose. You warm them up by the fire. Now you don't want to get them red hot, of course, and burn yourself, but you do want to just warm them up enough, and then the hot rocks store the heat, and then they let all the heat go off again. So I'd have a few in the fire, warming up. I'd pull them out and I'd tuck them in around me, back inside the shelter. Put some down by my feet, up in the lower part of my back and around my chest. And as those ones cooled down, I'd put them back in the fire and pull out the new batch. And it's a neat little survival trick to know. It's hard to find, if you're losing me in the smoke. Yeah, sorry about that. It's hard to find rocks in the wintertime for sure. But overturned trees often will have them exposed on their root system. And I found these down by the side of the lake. And well, it's working so far. But my goodness, the nights are brutal. Just brutal.
If you ever get a chance, try that rock technique. It actually really works. It's a bit dirty. Remember that rock's hot. It's covered in ashes. But it's amazing when you tuck a rock in under the arm there, just like, oh, yeah, because it's essentially an uncomfortable hot water bottle.
I'm just making myself some spruce needle tea. Pine needles, spruce needles, cedar boughs. They call it a bush tea, but it actually has kept people alive. It kept them from scurvy in the past and throughout history. And the explorers, they're loaded with vitamin C. Some people have died of scurvy. Meanwhile, they were sleeping on cedar boughs and spruce boughs at night and didn't realize that they could have made tea out of it and gotten the vitamin C that they needed.
I should mention, I made those mitts and the mucklocks, actually, when I was living up in Yellowknife. And also Temagami, learned from various elders how to stitch together good winter mitts and winter mucklocks. I still have the patterns, as a matter of fact. It's a wonderful sort of, wintertime in the cabin, 6 feet of snow outside activity to do, just stitching together, a new pair of mitts.
It's tastes not too bad and mostly gives me a nice warm drink to sip on. Help keep my body warm and a little bit of nourishment, because this one energy bar per day thing is not feeding my strength at all. It's taking mostly everything I've got just to stay warm. You know, you always hear about stamping out help or SOS, and sure enough, those will work if you stamp them out in the snow. But it's a lot less effort just to simply stamp out a triangle, which is a sign for help, international distress signal. And then stick some trees on the 3 corners and turn those trees eventually into your signal fires. Gotta keep moving. Gotta keep moving. That's what they say in the north. Well, my 3 signal towers are up. Next thing is to get lots of birch bark, dried grass, whatever I can find that'll burn quickly, and to shove it inside and reinforce those a bit so I make sure that they don't fall down in the wind or anything. And I just realized after tromping around out here and setting all this up that I've been out here the whole time without my ice grips on in case I fall through. Very foolish indeed. Maybe I need some food.
A little bit later on, I will be definitely pointing out this fact that I learned a big lesson with this one particular experience, which is going to be that the big do 3 of these things is not necessary for any rescuers. They will stop at anything they see that is weird and out of the norm. So you don't need to take so much effort in making 3 of anything to, point out that you're in danger. If you put out anything odd, like a big square tarp on the lake, or get 1 signal fire going, that is enough for people who are looking for you. And even people who aren't looking for you, they just see it as being odd to come down and rescue you.
And more sleep.
Which is not to say that if it's easy to write SOS or help that you shouldn't do that. You should. I'm just saying if you can't do that, just one thing that's something that is obvious will help a lot.
Small rations I had in the beginning of the week are nearly gone. So the lack of food combined with very little sleep is beginning to take away my ability to think clearly, and I'm losing my motivation to even better my situation.
Now, see this shot right here? So I've told this story a little bit before. In the pile, well, actually, you can see the black tape where the chip had broken off, or the piece of metal. I knew right from the start as a filmmaker that because I was doing something that nobody else had ever done before, I needed to let people know. Or they're just going to think there's a crew with me. How's he getting all these shots if there's not a camera crew? And gosh, I remember in one case, the camera was a little bouncy on some moss and the wind was moving it. And someone was like, aha, you see the camera's moving. Somebody's there with them. Whatever. Never a crew with me. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And so I would include shots like this, where you can see the other camera. Now, later on, that led to a big argument with one particular editor in the very beginning of Survivorman because he couldn't grasp the reality that it was important to show the other cameras in the corner of the shot, because I'd have 2 or 3 cameras going and you could see them in each other's sort of shot except for maybe one, and he would only use the one shot where you couldn't see the other cameras. We had big arguments about it, actually. And I knew I was right, that the audience needed to see these other cameras that I'm setting up so even subconsciously they'd go, oh yeah, the dude's totally alone. And you can see he's got to do all the work. That's that story.
Well, end of another day. It was good to get my signal stamped out in that triangle. I've heard it suggested to do X's, of course SOS, help, whatever, but the triangle is the easiest to do and the quickest, I think. It's good to get that done, and the importance of layering my clothing really counted today. I didn't overheat at all. I could take off and put on as I needed to. And it's just, that's 40 below. What else do you need to know? Well, I'm about 100 kilometers from the nearest soul out here. One thing about the winter, at least, is the traveling can be easier. Forget about it going through the thick bush, unless you've got snowshoes. but at least you can get out on the lake and move around. I know when I've done summer survival simulations, you can be trapped in one little location, unable to get past swamps, unable to get past the lake. At least in the winter, you've got a little bit more mobility, even if it is freezing.
Even putting a contact lens in out here is a challenge.
I forgot that. I have told that before. I mean, back then I was wearing contact lenses. So every Survivorman episode you ever saw, pretty much I think, I was wearing contact lenses. And I would keep with me, little packs of extra lenses, which would freeze on me, sometimes accidentally open up and the liquid would drain out, and they'd be ruined. And that was probably the worst part of most of the Survivorman episodes, was just trying to put in contact lenses in the morning with filthy fingers.
You probably can't hear that, but there's a big jet going right over top of me. Don't even bother. They're 30,000 feet up, and they can't see the biggest signal you can make. Some cedar boughs to add to my bush tea. Wild edible plants in the summer is a great thing, but it's another story in the wintertime. I've been looking around for Labrador tea to, my lips are still frozen, to add to my bush tea. I haven't seen anywhere. Rock tripe is another, that's that black curly stuff that you see on rocks on the sides of lakes and rivers usually. That can also be boiled up and softened and eaten. It's a little hard on the system, but it does have starch and some nutrients in it. If I remember correctly, it's what Franklin survived on. Rock tripe. Tripe de roche.
Wow, that's a great time. Luke, show 'em Wild Harvest.
Hey Les!
Gotta watch some whales.
Oh my gosh! This perhaps is the most incredible kitchen scenario I've ever had.
Can you create a dish where the domestic ingredients don't overshadow the wild ingredients?
This dish is a showcase of how great these foraged ingredients come together.
It's the best when it's its own flavor. When you're making something with a wild edible, you're nailing it and not losing the wild flavor.
It's a great series. I love making Wild Harvest. We've got 3 seasons out there now, 37 episodes. You can see them in the playlists here on this YouTube channel anytime. And of course, they air on the Weather Network in Canada and PBS in the United States, public television, and courtesy of American Public Television. Yeah, just if it's, I love making that series, and I've loved making it for you. I hope you enjoy it. If you get a chance to watch it, if you like foraging for wild edibles, it's your series.
In a situation like this, just a small amount of pleasantries, a hot drink, can lift the spirits immensely and make surviving possible.
I have an extra disadvantage in being out here. My fingers freeze really easily, and when I try to work on this stuff, which is touching the cold bare metal, they're frozen very quickly. It's very scary because at times your fingers can numb up so badly and be in so much pain you just can't move until you can get them warm.
And I should point out that's because through trauma, which in my case is, I believe, running dog teams in the Arctic, I froze my fingers slightly so many times that I sort of got a self-induced Raynaud's syndrome, they call it, Raynaud's syndrome. And it's, if I jump in the lake right now and come out, the tops of my fingers all go completely white. And you got to get the blood back in there quickly because it means at that moment, everything in there is dead. So it means that for me, cold things in my hands is just very painful. And I have to put up with it. But it all comes back to when I was dog sledding, and what you'd have to do in dog sledding is you have to, the hook that would go on the back of one dog, it would be frozen shut, and you have to thaw it out with your bare hands so you can undo the clasp and set the dog free. And sometimes there'd be dog crap on that hook, so you had to thaw out dog poop, thaw out the clasp, and then open it up. And anyway, years of doing that, and I now have trauma-induced Raynaud's syndrome.
It's time to put my axe to good use and see if I can get through the thick ice. Maybe get a chance at catching a fish and getting back some good food energy.
You want to make sure that you hold on to your axe too. Worst thing is you go through just in the last second, you can shoot your axe right down into the hole and never see it again.
You can just imagine how much energy this requires. It's a tough job when all I've got in my stomach is spruce needle tea.
You can see as soon as I chop it out, the water keeps seeping in from the side. It's a race against each other here, between me and the water coming in. This ice could be only 1.5 feet, well, 2 feet thick, because I'm down about 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet now. Or it could be 5 feet thick, which it gets to up here. And if it's 5 feet thick, axe or no axe, I'm not catching any fish, because I'll never get through it.
The obvious danger here is getting my clothes wet. Once I'm done the job, I'll need to stand by the fire for a few hours to dry out before night falls.
Success! Now that the water's shot up like that, I know I'm through. So I just got to make sure I got a hole big enough to get a fish through. And if I don't, I'll have to get a pole and try and make sure the hole's big enough to pull up a fish.
Yeah, that, chopping through with an axe, you get soaking wet doing it. And not highly recommended, because it's kind of, if you don't have a way of getting dried out, it's very dangerous. I had a fire going, but that didn't mean that a whiteout might not come in or wind could pick up. It could be very difficult. So it was tricky getting my clothing to dry before I went in for the evening. But I had to pay a lot of attention to it. But once you get through, well, ice fishing opens up a whole new opportunity for getting food in a survival situation. Looking yesterday, going through some bins, I actually still have, I certainly have the mitts, I have the mucklucks, and I still have that red jacket from those days.
Probably one of the tougher disciplines out here is to not use up all my resources or wreck my supplies by breaking and burning them.
I've been making use of my coma tick here by just helping to cover up the shelter a bit, and then I pull my fire in closer to me, and I just keep a nice small fire, and it's helping me to stay warm at night and beat some of this brutal cold. The other thing I'm doing is I take the sled bag that's attached to the other side of it off, and I wrap it around myself and over top of myself, try and keep a little bit more body heat in. Anything you can use for shelter and warmth is fair game in the survival world. Well, one thing you can do if you want to keep your hole from freezing overnight is get a big pile of, just push all kinds of snow over top. 6 feet long and 3 feet high is not overdoing it at all. You want to try and keep it from freezing up. You have to go all through the chopping all over again. Now in my case, I've got the axe though, so I know at least with an axe, it's only going to freeze a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's more when you don't have an axe that I get worried about it. But
This is when fishing is all about luck.
And this is one of those situations when I'm filming something like this, I just wish and hope so hard to catch a fish, because I know how cool it would look on camera if I did. For example, when I caught the rabbit in the snare, I knew that was going to be a great scene sort of thing. But alas, it was not to be.
maybe I need a new lure.
A whiteout has come in this morning, and this was supposed to be the day I get picked up. If the weather doesn't break, I'll be stuck out here for another night. And that wasn't in my plans.
You can't fight weather. If it's a whiteout, it's a whiteout. Planes are grounded, so are helicopters.
You know, this situation was really as real as it gets. When I saw this whiteout coming in, I thought, that's it. I'm here for another night yet. I was supposed to be getting picked up today, and it could have been 3 days worth of whiteouts. So we've had that happen before. So I truly was not in the know and truly was wondering what was going to happen.
Through a small window of opportunity, when the snow backed off just a little, they came looking for me. They knew where they dropped me down, but they'd have no idea as to where I might have gone. The signal sticks out like a beacon against the stark white backdrop of the frozen lake. Running between them is tough. It's still well below zero, and even with a burning piece of birch bark in my hands, my fingers freeze while I run. The flare shows up well, but it's short-lived, so on its own, there may only be a small chance at getting someone's attention. If any of this looked easy, guess again. I'm always asked, which is tougher, the cold or the heat? And after a week of dehydration and sunburnt skin, parched landscapes and oppressive heat, I'm inclined to say it's the deserts. They're the toughest. But then I step back onto the snow. I feel the chill up my spine at 3 a.m. in the middle of a long winter night. I feel the sting of frostbite as it threatens to take away the use of my fingers. And I feel the exhaustion as I keep myself moving constantly in a battle to survive. And I think, no, it's not the heat. It's the cold. It's always the cold.
So cool, and a shout out to Fred Rowe, it's a buddy of mine in survival, one of my first instructors actually, who came out and got the camera shots of the plane seeing me down below there. And of course to Ernie Nickel, Trevor's dad, who came to pick me up. I should also give a shout out to Jane Gilbert. You know, Jane and I worked on these first two pilots together when she was working for Discovery Channel. She was, in essence, my executive producer. So there you go. That is the second Survivorman, if you will, that I ever shot. It was originally called 1 Week in the Wilderness with Les Stroud. Then I changed it to Stranded so I could have it as an individual film. And now it's the Survivorman Pilot 1 and Pilot 2. That's Pilot 2. Pilot 1 is coming up next. I'm excited for that. After Pilot 1, I will be doing the whole year in the wilderness that I spent with Sue. I will be doing that one, and then moving on to Beyond Survival. All of the Bigfoot ones are done, by the way. They're in the playlist for director's commentaries. So thanks for watching. It's really such a blast from the past to go back and look at these films that are from, as I said, this one was 2002. So 23 years ago. Boy, so young, so young. See you soon.